And we have tragic news to report out of Texas. At least 14 students and one teacher are dead after gunmen opened fire at an elementary school in the town of Uvalde, which is west of San Antonio. Governor Greg Abbott says the suspected shooter, an 18-year-old man, also died, believed to be killed by responding officers. The massacre taking place just 2 days before the summer break. And of course, we're going to have much more on this. We're going to hear from the governor of Texas and police who just held back-to-back press conferences.
Yeah, Ashley, I just got in that video of the governor's press conference. Let me play it out for you.
The shooter was Salvador Ramos, an 18-year-old male who resided in Uvalde. It's believed that he abandoned his vehicle and entered into the Robb Elementary School in Uvalde with a handgun, and he may have also had a rifle, but that is not yet confirmed according to my most recent report. He shot and killed horrifically, incomprehensibly, 14 students and killed a teacher. Mr. Ramos, the shooter, he himself is deceased and is believed that responding officers killed him.
That was the governor of Texas speaking there. Just tragic video coming into our newsroom right now. You just saw shots from an aerial position there above the school, blood-soaked sidewalks, just really hard to look at. I have a live picture also coming into our newsroom right now. This is outside the hospital there in Texas. We're awaiting any more updates, but I did get another update, as you mentioned, Ashley, from the police chief. I'm going to play that out for you as well.
At approximately 11:32 a.m. this morning, there was a mass casualty incident at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas. This school has children that are in 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade. I can confirm right now that we have several injuries, adults and students, and we do have some deaths. The suspect is deceased at this point. DPS is assisting with the investigation. And at this point, the investigation is leading to tell us that the suspect did act alone during this heinous crime. Families are being notified, and we are providing services to them as the district should. As far as the rest of the district is concerned, safety measures were taken to make sure that we had a safe release for the rest of the district throughout our city of Uvalde. And we had numerous law enforcement officers and agencies that assisted with the safety release for those students. We do want to keep all our families in their prayers. I hope you do as well. And we also want to respect the privacy of the family. The crime scene is still being worked on. And again, we'll notify the parents and the families as soon as we have some news for them.
Another live picture coming into the H&N Digital Center as we continue to track this still developing story. This is actually the command post that is set up near the school, I believe. We're going to stay on top of this very much still developing story all afternoon long here at H&N. Keep checking your H&N digital platforms for updates. And if anything comes into our newsroom during this newscast, we'll be sure to bring you those updates as well.
Now to breaking news here at home. We just got this image into our newsroom that we want to show you. Big Island police are back at the scene of a homicide investigation in Nana Valley. The incident happened shortly before 3 a.m. on Saturday, and officers responded to the intersection of Nana Valley Boulevard and Seaview Road after receiving a report of a man that had been shot. Authorities say 36-year-old Junio Rason was found dead. Investigators have not yet identified a suspect or motive, but investigators are back at that scene today.
All right, moving on to even more developing news. President Biden is heading back from his trip to Asia. We expect to hear from him as well about that shooting when he lands. But, the topic of conversation there in Asia was China, and that's what he's been discussing with world leaders.
Right. Elizabeth Palmer has been following the diplomacy as well as the U.S. troops that are there in the region, training to fight Chinese forces if needed.
The group is known as the Quad. And the president posed with the other leaders, Japan's Fumio Kishida, India's Narendra Modi, and a freshly elected Anthony Albanese from Australia.
The United States must and will be strong, steady, and enduring partner in the Indo-Pacific.
That engagement is anchored by America's huge military presence in the region. There are around 55,000 U.S. troops in Japan alone. We joined the 3rd Battalion, 2nd Marines on the island of Okinawa. in the rain for a training exercise. Lieutenant Robert Booker's platoon is defending this patch of jungle against attackers sneaking up on them.
The enemy in this exercise is another U.S. platoon, but there isn't a Marine involved today that doesn't know this is a rehearsal for a possible Chinese invasion of Taiwan.
When you're doing these kinds of exercises these days, is Taiwan on your mind?
100%.
It is it?
Yes, ma'am. Especially looking at the terrain, things like that. This is what we would encounter there.
The island of Taiwan considers itself independent. China maintains it's not. Yesterday, President Biden reiterated that the U.S. would intervene if China moved to seize it by force.
Yes, that's the commitment we made.
The administration quickly moved to soften that stance.
Our policy has not changed.
China regularly sends its planes and warships on aggressive sorties around Taiwan and calls America's military presence in the region a provocation. Right now, it's a war of words. And here's where the Quad comes in.
The militaries of Japan, India, and Australia have done joint exercises with U.S. forces quite recently. And that sends a big, powerful message that if push ever did come to shove in this region, America is not alone. Elizabeth Palmer, CBS News, Tokyo.
Well, if you are packing up, listen up, because Memorial Day holiday travel is getting back to what it used to be before the pandemic. With more on that, we're joined now by digital reporter Dylan Ancheta. Dylan, how many people are going to be traveling?
Hey, Jonathan. It's expected that 39 million people will be hitting the skies and the roads this holiday weekend. That's an 8% jump from last year. Of course, travel volumes are nearing pre-pandemic levels. And new at noon, CBS News senior travel editor Peter Greenberg is in Dublin, Ireland. He'll provide an update on the travel situation. Let's start with international travel. Here's what he thinks you should know.
Well, the good news is that the power of the U.S. dollar is basically the highest it's been against foreign currencies in about 20 years. And against certain currencies, it's the highest it's been in 5, including the euro, which is down to about $1.03. So if you follow the power of the dollar, you can make some international travel plans with the confidence that you're not going to have to mortgage your house. Look at the currencies like Argentina, South Africa, and Turkey. They've devalued their lira so much in Turkey that a vacation in Turkey this summer will cost you about 36% of what it would have cost you about 2 years ago.
All right, Dylan, what about those gas prices? How are they impacting this travel rush?
Now, of course, even with these soaring gas prices, so many people are still itching to get away. Nationwide, 2.5 million passengers are expected to fly each day this holiday weekend. If you are headed to the mainland, the real rush will be on the roads, even as those gas prices continue to climb. Here's what Peter Greenberg had to say about that.
Fuel prices may be rising, but we haven't yet reached the tipping point where people would consciously choose not to travel by car. And the reason for that is airfares are so high. An airfare from Los Angeles to San Francisco 5 weeks ago was about $93 round trip. Today, it's $410. Now, try to figure that out in terms of a family of 4. That's more than a $1,600 airline ticket. They're going to put 4 kids in the car and go that way. And in fact, even if gas got up to $10 or $11 a gallon based on airline prices, people are still going to get in their car, and the numbers for this Memorial Day weekend reflect that.
So we've heard a lot about staffing problems with airlines. How is that playing out right now, Dylan?
Yeah, now, according to a Bloomberg report, carriers including American and United are anxious to have a strong summer showing as they take advantage of the skyrocketing demand and rising fares to end pandemic-related losses. The largest U.S. airline had net losses of $35 billion in 2020 and $2.8 billion in 2021. That's according to Airlines for America, their lobbying group. Airlines say they've trimmed flights to just what they have enough staff to cover. They've also ramped up hiring for jobs ranging from cockpit and cabin crews to baggage handlers and even call center workers. They're replacing thousands who left their jobs during the downturn. And while a poor performance this summer likely won't quell the desire of Americans to fly, carriers do risk a loss of customers and revenue, as well as the risk of reputational harm.
That all-important reputation. All right, Dylan, thank you so much for that update. Let's toss things over to Ashley with more news.
It's primary day in 5 states, and all eyes are on the high-stakes race for governor in Georgia. Ed O'Keefe has been following this developing story.
Georgia Governor Brian Kemp shared the stage last night with longtime ally, former Vice President Mike Pence.
We're in the fight for the soul of our state.
That puts them at odds with former President Donald Trump, who pushed former Senator David Perdue to enter the governor's race.
Brian Kemp is a turncoat, he's a coward, and he's a complete and total disaster.
Re-elect Governor Brian Kemp for 4 more years at the State House.
But Perdue is turning his focus to the unopposed Democratic candidate for governor, Stacey Abrams, and these comments she made last weekend.
I am tired of hearing about being the best state in the country to do business when we are the worst state in the country to live. When you're number 48 for mental health, when you're number 1 for maternal mortality, then you're not the number 1 place to live.
And while the 48-year-old has called Georgia home since high school, Perdue had this response last night.
Said that Georgia's the worst place in the country to live. Hey, she ain't from here. Let her go back where she came from. She doesn't like it here.
Trump has endorsed dozens of Republican candidates across the country this year, but he's arguably most personally invested in Georgia. His hand-picked candidate for U.S. Senate, ex-NFL player Herschel Walker, is expected to easily win his primary, setting himself up for a race against Democratic Senator Raphael Warnock. But it's in Georgia's other statewide races where the former president's support may not be enough to produce a win. In the wake of the 2020 elections, he pressured Kemp and Republican Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger to help change the results of the election so he could keep the White House. Trump's pressure included phone calls like this one.
Look, Brad, I have to find 12,000 votes.
Both men refused, and that's upset some Republican voters here.
I will not vote for Brian Kemp under any circumstances.
But polls show Kemp is likely to easily win tonight, thanks to Republicans who support how he handled the pandemic, has built up the state economy, and his willingness to stand up to Trump.
Is Trump the kingmaker of the party? I firmly believe he is not.
I think it's rather unseemly for a former president, and I believe it's somewhat vengeful.
Raffensperger faces a crowded field and may be headed to a runoff.
I've talked to Tea Party groups, Republican Party groups, Rotary, Kiwanis, business chambers, any group that'll invite me in. I've been talking about the facts.
In a sign of the interest in these primaries, more than 875,000 early votes were cast, a record, more than triple the number that showed up 4 years ago for similar contests, and all this in a state that has rewritten its election laws since the 2020 election. Ed O'Keefe, CBS News, Atlanta.
We're learning a lot more about the man who will become Honolulu's next police chief, Arthur Joe Logan. That decision was unanimous by the police commission, but it came after months of extensive searching and vetting. Logan was selected out of 4 finalists for the position, 2 of whom were within HPD's ranks. He most recently had been an investigator with the state attorney general's office, but Logan served in the Honolulu Police Department for 20 years before taking a number of positions with the Hawaii National Guard. He was the state adjutant general and head of the Hawaii Emergency Management Agency when the 2018 false missile alert happened. He addressed that and what he learned from that day in speaking to the commissioners. Here's even more of what he had to say to reporters after the news broke yesterday of his hiring.
In terms of rising crime in Honolulu, Chief, what's your first step that you'd like to do to address the rising crime rate over the first 3 months of the year?
Well, the question to me is, are we accurately accounting for what the rising crime is, and then where that is, location-wise, and then what type of crimes that are, and then take a look within the department what resources we have to attack that.
How do you plan on addressing the 300+ positions that need to be filled?
Well, that's a recruiting issue that we need to work out. And as I mentioned in the commission meeting, I want to look at how we're recruiting, what is the budget for recruiting, and then how large the recruiting staff is. And if we can accelerate that, make it bigger, and get more impact and get more, what I'd like is every officer, every civilian that works in the police department to be a recruiter. And I'd like them to try to bring somebody into the department either once a month or at least once a year so we can get the numbers up, and then we've got to look at the recruiting process.
How do you gain the trust of the people under you in as short a time as possible?
lead by example, show humility. My goal is to motivate, inspire, coach, teach, and mentor so that everyone in the department can reach their max potential of what they'd like to be. So if you have a young officer who would like to be the police chief, my job is to teach them how to do that. And my job coming in day one is to find my replacement. This is a 5-year term. I'm not going to be there long term for decades. And so because of that, I've got to find somebody capable of taking my place. And there are the 2 candidates that were also applying are qualified, so we need to take a look at that.
You mentioned healing within the department. What about with the public? It's been a very difficult time for HPD.
So I have to make myself available to the public to get their insights and answer their questions and their concerns, and show that the department that I'm going to now lead is going to help them in what they would like in the community and what they want in their police department.
And we also have new reaction into our newsroom today of Logan's hiring from Shopo. Let's turn things over to Casey Lunn with more on that.
I want to get to an important voice in this conversation, and that is the president of the State of Hawaii Organization of Police Officers, Robert Cavaco, with us. I want to ask you right off the bat your personal gut reaction feeling with Joe Logan, who did spend 20 years in the department, as he was selected yesterday.
Yeah, we're definitely delighted that Chief Logan was selected to be the new face and leader of HPD, and we're just delighted to really get to work with him and try to move the department forward.
What are some of the top priorities you'd like to see him get started on right away for your members?
Well, there's 3 things that we would like the chief to focus on. First is our staffing shortage in patrol. We really have been talking about that for the last 4 or 5 months. We know that he's going to take a comprehensive look at the department and try and see what he can do, in a short time, as long as do any kind of recruiting or retention programs. So that's one thing that we know that he's going to address. The second thing would be uniforms and equipment, to try and get better equipment and uniforms for our officers, maybe a different gun belt, a load-bearing vest to put the equipment on. And we know that by equipping our officers with better equipment will then parlay into better service, because the officers being serving the community and having the right tools to do the job will give better service. And the third thing would be is our 312 schedule that we would like the chief to look at, that's currently being piloted in Kalihi and Windward side.
And those are 3 12-hour days, and that could lead to an ease in recruitment as well.
Yes, so a 312 work schedule like that is not really offered in the private sector or any other public job. So we would hope that the chief would use that as a recruiting tool.
Last question, really quickly: what is morale like right now inside the HPD currently, and what is he going to be walking into?
Right now the morale is at an all-time low in the department. I think it's been there for quite a while with what has transpired in the past. But I think with this decision that the Police Commission made, finally, after a year of going through the process, I can see uplifting spirits already just in one day, that finally we have a new leader and we're going to move forward.
At least a path now to move forward. So time will tell how well things work out. Robert Cavaco, president of the state's police union.
We got more breaking news to get to right now here at HNN. Here's a live video feed coming into the HNN Digital Center. This is the White House. You can see the flags there at half staff. This, of course, is in regards to the tragedy we are still learning details about by the moment here at the HNN Digital Center. Let me recap you on everything we know right now. There's been a school shooting in Texas. At least 14 students and 1 teacher are dead after a gunman opened fire at an elementary school in the town of Uvalde. This is just west of San Antonio. The governor of Texas tells us the suspected shooter is an 18-year-old man who has died, believed to be killed by responding officers. We're going to stay on top of this story all day long here at HNN. I imagine there'll be another news briefing here very shortly. As soon as that happens, we'll try to get a live stream up for you on your HNN digital platforms and give you that update.
And this is new today. The University of Hawaii says it's reinstating its indoor mask mandate as the state's COVID surge continues. UH says masks will be required at all campuses within the UH system starting Wednesday, except when working alone or when 6 feet away from others. Now, officials say the mandate was recommended by medical and public health experts, and the rule will remain in effect and will be re-evaluated based on the situation. Meantime, Honolulu Mayor Rick Blangiardi says all keiki participants in this year's Summer Fun program will also be required to wear face coverings while indoors or inside program vehicles unless they have a medical exemption. Of course, face coverings are optional for outdoors for summer fun.
All right, want to get you a check of your weather now. Here's Billy V, who's in for Guy Hockey.
This is your daytime high, 85 degrees, and that's pretty much today. Nice, stable weather day, but a little bit villa, a little bit warm. We get to tomorrow, Thursday, Friday, trade wind weather, 10 to 20 miles per hour. So that means you got a lot of sunshine, clouds are on the move, temperatures are good. It's going to be really nice. And then you get towards the weekend, and those winds dip down again. So we've got 6 days, almost 7 days of just really classic Hawaii weather. Welcome to summertime. It's looking great outside.
Thanks, Billy, for that update. Let's see what the internet is talking about today. Some positive news to get to. And this involves New York City. You know, they got rid of their last payphone there on 7th Avenue in New York City. It's going to a museum for what it's being called an exhibit about what it's like before the time of computers. I don't even know what that was like. The payphone is headed there. But here in Hawaii, you don't have to go far to find them. You know, the last count by the FCC I could find was in 2016. Said we had the most payphones per capita of any state in the nation at 3,615. Some experts say in an article I saw on Civil Beat that tourist destinations sort of have a higher concentration of payphones still lingering around. I really love our version of payphones. We have the retro hibiscus on the side, and you know I love it so much so that I had to make my whole Halloween costume based off of it. Had to show that one more time.
Yeah, and how much do they cost? Like 50 cents a call?
Oh, I don't even know how much they cost anymore. Yeah, that's a good question.
Well, check this out. A TikTok video of a 5-year-old T-ball player in California dancing his way up to the plate during his last game of the season is going viral. Here's Adrian Moore with that story.
If confidence is key in baseball, this little guy's got a bright future. That's Ben Sadlowski with the Manteca T-ball Cubs, busting out just about every dance move in the book on his walk up to the plate. His mom, Monica, says the season-ending show was no surprise.
Every last game, we do a walkout song for each player. I wasn't expecting him to do all that, but it's not uncommon for him. That's his own thing. He's just a goofy guy.
So we had to ask, where did Ben learn those moves?
I mean, I'm kind of goofy myself, so he might have picked it up from me, but it definitely was not his father. I can assure you that.
And it wasn't just Ben's boogie that was a hit. His performance made even more impressive with a single to left field. And while there's no scorekeeping in T-ball, Monica says the comments she's received on social media prove Ben's brilliant show made millions of people feel like a winner.
And everybody was just like, man, I was having a really bad day, and that just made my day so much better. And I'm like, man, that's awesome.
That's it for This Is Now on this Tuesday. Keep checking your H&N digital platforms for updates of all today's breaking stories.
Aloha.